So thanks all for coming. I'm Ido. I've done ski to sea about 30 times, been in the top 10 a few times. I've done maybe 15 or so long distance ultra races. And this is Veronica. She's done ski to sea over 25 times. She was on the winning Whatcom women's team about 10 times. She was the fastest woman on the river a couple of different times with different paddlers. She's done the Yukon River Quest 4 times. She won her division every time she did it. And we've both done a bunch of wilderness trips. So we like being in canoes is the bottom line. What I want to do today is talk about 3 different things and practice a couple of them. So the general idea is that to enjoy paddling, we have to have control of our boats. So we'll talk about that first. If we want to be efficient, so we'll talk about what it means to be efficient in flat water paddling. I want to emphasize that we're talking about flat water, which is different than wild water or white water and so on. There's a bunch of different videos online. I've tried to find something that's particular to flat water. It's not that easy to find. So one of the things I want you to take away from this is the ability to say, this is for me, this is not for me, when you get different ideas, okay? So how to be efficient in flat water paddling. And then the third thing I want to talk about is equipment, preparation, race day routine, anything you have a question about in that respect. If I'm not clear, please stop me. If your hand is up and I don't see it, say question. Questions are welcome at any time, but when we're going through the first section, let's stick with clarity. If something is not clear, ask away. When we get to the end discussion about various things, ask anything, right? But I'd like to keep the flow going so that we get to the water and we get to practice. Okay, so for control, I'm going to talk about a number of different steering strokes. By the way, the reason I'm talking and Veronica is not is that I structured the workshop and that I'm louder. Okay, so she knows at least as much as I do. I want to be clear about this. On the control side, I'm going to talk about a few strokes. There are other control strokes that I'm not going to talk about. These are the ones that are most likely to be useful during the ski to sea race. Okay, so the first stroke that I want to talk about is one that you will try to avoid if you can, because it'll slow you down, but it's the most effective way to turn the boat. Now, let's understand how the boat behaves. A boat floats on the water, at least we hope, and so the motion of the boat is always relative to the water. Here in the lake, if you just sat in your boat, you drift slowly with the wind, which is coming this direction, but you wouldn't move very much, right? In the river, that's not true. In the river, when you're sitting in water, you'll move with the flow of the river. Steering always happens not relative to your motion, but relative to the water. So if you want to do the first stroke that I'm going to talk about, which is a stern rudder, a rear rudder, I will say stern and bow, meaning rear and front. I will mix the two of them. I'm sorry, it's habit. I'm going to talk about a rear rudder, a stern rudder. That is the fastest way to turn the boat. It slows you down, which is why you don't want to do it. In order for the rudder to work, you have to be moving. There has to be forward motion or stern rearward motion, but forward motion in our case, yeah?
Relative to the water.
Relative to the water. So if you're moving in the river, you cannot rudder until you're moving relative to the water. Yes? So for purposes of demonstration, Veronica's going to paddle bow today, and I'm going to paddle stern. So I'm going to, could you move forward a little bit? I'd like to stand this way, and I'd like all of you to do the same thing. please stand so that the bow paddler is in front and the stern paddler is in the back. Because as we're doing this, I want you to think about what you're doing, right? So for a rudder, we're moving. I should grab a paddle. For a rudder, the boat has to be moving forward. Now, suppose that we want to turn left. Left for you is that way. Suppose you want to turn left, then to do that, which side would I rudder on?
Right. That's correct.
No,
Strong side.
no, rudder on the left to go left.
Okay, sorry.
So I would rudder on. She's a stern paddler, but she's standing in the bow, which is confusing. So I would rudder on the left because the water would push on the paddle, right? The water would push on the paddle and move the bow, the nose, to the left. Yes? So suppose you're going straight and you want to rudder to turn right. What do? Turn right. Now, one subtle point about ruddering, if Veronica's paddling on the left and I'm ruddering on the left, what's going on? We're working against each other, right? She's trying to push the boat this way and I'm trying to push the boat that way. So the first thing I would do if I'm going to rudder on the left is to make sure that she's on the right. Yes? How do I do that? I talked to her, yeah. Yeah. So basically you call a switch. Now, most people will either say switch or they will say hut or hup. The reason that paddlers, marathon paddlers, tend to prefer hup or hut is that it's easier to say and it's louder, right? The soft SW of switch is often hard to hear. I know this sounds silly, but in the river there's splash noise from the paddles. There may be other boats. You may be near a road. It's easy to miss a call, right? So
The other thing is, if you're breathing hard, it's a lot easier to say hut than it is to say switch.
good point. So that's the switching, all right? You again, for a rudder, the boat has to be moving, and it slows you down to rudder. So we basically don't do it unless we're really trying to avoid something, okay? In the river. In the lake, it can be useful because otherwise it's hard to turn. Okay, now I want to talk about 3 different strokes that we use to steer. One of them we touched on already when we talked about which side the person is on. If I'm paddling on the right and Veronica's paddling on the left, then the stern is likely to overwhelm the bow because the stern paddle is closer to the back of the boat, the end of the boat. The bow paddle is closer to the middle of the boat. Yeah, so there's more leverage in the stern, and so the boat will turn to the left if I'm on the right. So how do I, suppose we're paddling here, and I want to actually turn the other direction. How do I do that? Up. And we go. Yeah? Does that make sense? And so that's the you just switch to go the other way, right? So while we're on that topic, if I want to go straight and I'm on my left and Veronica's on her right, then what do? I want to go straight. If I'm on my left, I'm going to be turning left, and if I'm on my right, I'll be turning. I'm sorry. If I'm on my left, I'm turning right. If I'm on my right, I'll be turning left. So how do I avoid doing this going downriver? J-stroke. Okay. Thanks for that answer. That is a way to do it, but the reason we don't J-stroke is that that's like a rudder. It slows us down. So what we do is actually a compromise. We accept that the boat is going to do a little bit of a weave, and we switch fairly often. So in a race boat like this, an efficient way to switch is probably somewhere between 8 and 12 strokes. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, hut, and switch. Typically, we call the hut at the beginning of the stroke before we switch to give our partner time to switch. So it would be 1, 2, practice with us, 3, 4, 5, 6, hut, and switch. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, hut, and switch. 2. You got it. Okay? Now, if you're weaving too much, shorten the hut terms. In some of these boats, you will wind up having to switch as much as every 6 strokes. In some of these boats, like that aluminum boat over there with the keel, you probably could get away with 20 strokes before you have to switch because it has a keel. Okay?
In this boat, it's probably 8 to 10.
Yes. Don't overdo it because you'll tire out your bow paddler. Yes? Now, I'm talking about the stern paddler calling the huts. That's usually the case because the stern paddler sees the boat better and sees where you want to go. And so the stern paddler typically calls the switches. It's not mandatory. It's a team agreement. The same is true for when you call the hut before the switch. It's not mandatory. It's a team agreement. I'm telling you what most people do. Yeah? And so, but it is more efficient for the stern person to steer. Yeah? Okay, so we talked about the rudder, which we don't want to do. We talked about being on which side we want to be on to turn the boat. If we want to use that to extremes, we can be on the same side. So if we want to turn right, we can both be on our left. Yes? And that will turn the boat. Now, this is called being on sides, and it's a little less stable. Yes? So be aware when you're going to sides that you should be a little careful. Okay? And then I want to say one more thing. Okay, so that's about the which side. The next turning technique that I want to talk about is a draw, and for that, both stern and bow paddlers can draw, and they're both very effective. Okay, what I'm going to describe is called a quarter draw. It has both some forward motion and some rotation. Yes, so the draw, you stick the paddle in the water. Let me emphasize, every time the paddle's in the water, the blade portion of the paddle should be entirely in the water, because the mechanics of it are that you are planting the paddle and pulling the boat to the paddle. Do not think about moving water, think about moving boat. Yes? This is not a motor that has thrust. This is an anchored position, and then you pull toward it. So for the quarter draw, you plant the paddle at about, well, this would be a quarter circle, so I don't know why you call it a quarter draw. It's more like 60 degrees or something like that. And then you plant and you just pull towards the paddle. What that does is it moves your side of the boat toward the paddle. Yes? Now you can have an extreme version of it where you plant the paddle completely next to you and pull. That's much harder to achieve, and it doesn't do anything for forward momentum. And so most people use quarter draws. That's what I would recommend you start with. Okay? So if we want to turn to the left, which side should I be on and which side should Veronica be on for quarter draws?
Other way around.
Other way around. So if I'm on my right, I'm pulling the stern to the right, which will turn the bow to the left. And if she's on her left, she'll be pulling the bow to the left, which will bring it to the front. Again, feel free to practice with us to do this. So hut and draw. Okay, which means just keep paddling, okay, or back, whatever. And then hut and draw. Okay. All right, so we have the rudder for emergencies. We have switching sides or being on the side for turning. We have the draws for turning. And I want to talk about one other turning technique, which is a little tricky. I strongly recommend practicing it at very slow speed first. Okay? That technique is a lean. It depends a lot on the boat. But you lean the boat in order to make it turn. Let me explain how this works. If I want to turn left, I would lean down on my right side, yes? Notice I'm using my hip, I'm not using my torso. I'm not leaning like this because I would tip the boat. I'm leaning I push down with my right butt cheek and thigh to tilt the boat. And that would lower the right side of the boat, lift the left side of the boat, and the left side would slide over better. If you want the physics, it's an inclined plane, right? And you're presenting an inclined plane to the left, and it will turn that way. If I go ahead and do this with me, if I want to turn to the right, I would lean down on the left and maybe do a little quarter draw, I don't know, depending on conditions. Okay? Now, the bow paddler will feel the lean and will most likely lean with me if lean is necessary. The nice thing about the lean is you can keep your forward stroke going full tilt. You don't have to stop, and it still turns the boat. Okay?
I couldn't hear that, what you just said.
I'm sorry. The nice thing about the lean is that you keep the full force of the forward stroke, and it doesn't take away from your speed. Yeah.
And
now, yes.
I would add to that experiment. You don't have to lean it a lot to get an effect, essentially, most of the time. The more you lean it, the more you're getting in the territory. You should practice it because you're getting in the territory where you could tip the boat. But always remember that you're kind of making a C with your body, the idea being that you're keeping the upper part of your body sort of straight up, the way it would normally be, and letting the lower part of your body shift the boat.
Okay. So any question about the steering strokes we've talked about?
When the lean was that, is that something you would try to coordinate between the two of the people?
So the stern person would typically initiate it. As a stern person, when I stern, which is again I've only done it some. I like to warn the bow paddler. I will say leaning right, leaning left, but
You do both or just one of you?
it depends on the situation.
Okay.
Yeah. So typically the stern person initiates the lean, and they may warn the bow paddler just so that they know something's going on. And the bow paddler may or may not join depending on how much you want to turn. You know, I mean, both of you know what you're trying to do, right? I mean, you both know that you're trying to turn the boat if there's a turn in the river, or if you want to cut a turn in the river, you might turn hard or whatever you do. Yes.
I would say initially when you're practicing, let your partner know, because they're going to resist if you don't, because if they're not used to this happening. And at some point you might become so accustomed to each other you leave automatically.
Right. Is it a nice option before cutting to try leaning? You know, if you're doing the weaving, does slightly leaning help keep you straighter so you don't have to hut as often?
It slows your boat down, so you probably
it
want to keep
slows
the
the
butt.
boat down.
Yeah, technically yes, because you're basically
putting more surface area into
Well, it also depends on the shape of the boat, but you're putting more surface area in the water.
So if you see the boat starting to go,
Yeah.
fighting it with the lean is probably the first thing I would do. But putting more often is probably a better option.
Or efficient
Yeah.
or faster.
I'm sorry. So if there aren't any other questions about
I have
steering,
one.
yes.
Do you
Are
make
there rapids that we need to like power stop for? You know?
So the short answer is no. There are a couple of very small riffles in the race, and even in a boat like this, like a racing boat, you can just go right through them, no problem. Yeah. So no rapids. Yeah, it's flat water. The reasons for steering are to be efficient and to avoid obstacles. Yes.
I have a very specific question.
Yes.
So last year, we found that the canoe kept wanting to be pulled one way, and so we were just then like hard correcting to try to keep it straight. Was that an issue of just not switching sides enough?
It might be an issue with the canoe or the way it's weighted. Because the lean is a pretty effective way for turning the boat. If the boat is not weighted
Okay.
flat, the boat will have a tendency to lean.
Okay.
So you know those are things to watch for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if you're leaning the boat, you might want to pay attention until you figure out what the issue is.
Okay.
We can take a look at some point.
Okay.
I just
Yeah.
have one last question. So what is like the main variable you use to decide which turning technique to use? Is it how fast you're going? How fast you're
So fair question. What's the priority?
Yeah.
The priority is first switches because it's no loss of speed.
Yeah.
Yes. I would say then if it's a small turn, a slight lean. Again, because there's less loss of speed, you just have a little bit more wetted surface area. And then if you want a quick turn, I would say a draw. So if you're coming in and you know you're going to need a quick turn, I would hit it with a draw early. Draw early and it'll set up for the turn and then you go. Yeah?
Yeah, and if you have something sudden, like you suddenly see that there's a stump in front of you in the water, or somebody else is going to hit you, go for the rudder.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the rudder is always there, and it's always the easiest way to turn the boat.
Okay, so I want to talk briefly about the most important topic, which is the forward stroke. That's basically what you're doing. You're trying to go fast, and you're trying to be efficient at it. Even in our recreational trips, when we're not trying to go fast, we still like to be efficient because, you know, it's less work. So the forward stroke has 4 or 5 phases, depending on how you talk about it. The first phase, which is most frequently neglected and hardest to manage, is actually the wind-up. So to practice this, I want us all to stand about shoulder width apart. I want the knees slightly bent, right? The knees need to be slightly bent so that we can rotate. So I know this feels funky, but try to rotate just your hip, not your torso. We'll talk about torso later. Just try to rotate your hips, okay? So the wind up, suppose that I'm paddling on my left, the wind up is going to come from the right. I'm going to wind up like this. The critical part is that my left leg needs to be relaxed, because if my left leg is stiff and I push on my right, nothing happens. So I want to be here, relaxed in the left, push with the right. That's the most important part of the wind up, okay? Now the windup goes through my body with a torso rotation and a slight, very slight arm extension. If I put my arm all the way here, I have very high leverage, very little power. If I hold my arm here, I have a lot less leverage, but a lot more power. Yes? Does that make sense? So that's the wind-up. The next thing is the catch. As I said earlier, you're planting the paddle and pulling the boat to it. Yes? So it's important in the catch to insert the blade into the water so that it's all the way in. Yes? Your hand will typically be a few inches above the blade, so your hand stays out of the water. Yeah? That's the catch. Power comes from the upper hand here. Yes? Power from the upper hand in the catch. Yes? A little from the lower, but mostly from the upper. Yes? Now, then the pull comes. Now the pull is probably about 2/3 power from the rotation, right? We wound up and we're now unwinding. Yes? Yeah? We wound up and we're unwinding. Some of the power comes from the leg that you just flexed. A lot of it comes from the back. Some of it comes from the upper hand. About 2/3 lower hand, 1/3 upper hand. Yes? The stroke should be short. We don't want it to go like this because then I'm using my arm, which is not very strong, frankly. Yes? So, torso rotation. When I'm in the boat, once the paddle is about mid-hip, I'm going to run out of power. And then I start bringing it up. The paddle will come out, will exit really close to my hip. Yeah? And so it's going to be push to wind up, catch, pull, exit. Yeah? And then recovery. Right? Now the half step is when you're here, just wound up, the half step is to just hesitate just enough to stick the paddle in. There's just a brief moment of I've reached my maximum forward motion and now I want just a couple extra inches to go in and then I pull. Okay? So that's the forward stroke. Questions about just comprehension or clarity about this right now? Yes?
What's the definition of the half step?
I'm just saying it's some people call it 4 steps, some people call it 5, right? I mean, some people don't really talk about a hesitation. The hesitation is very brief. It almost doesn't happen, right? You're just here. It's not like you actually hold it. You're just here. There's a tiny bit of a hesitation before you catch.
Before you catch.
Yeah.
Oh, between the wind up.
Yeah,
and the catch.
wind up, set up, catch.
Oh,
Yeah. So the setup is the part that is, depending on how you think about it, it's either a step or not. All right. Now, I'd like to, if there aren't any other questions right now, I'd like to move towards the water. Now, what I want to practice mostly is going along shore to the far end. There's a little dock over there. There's a buoy in front of the dock. You can turn around the buoy, that's a good exercise. Or you can just turn, come back here, turn around, and keep going in loops, right? So on the straight part of the loop, I want you to practice the forward stroke. And on the round part, I want you to practice turning. And if you want a challenge, try to do the turning with no rudders. Just try to do the turn with a lean, a draw, not with ruddering. Yes? Now that's a challenge because doing a turn in a lake is actually hard without a rudder. Yeah. So, that's a challenge for you. Veronica and I will be paddling along here and giving you comments. Neil Bransfield here in the yellow kayak is also an expert paddler, and he'll also give you comments. Yes.
I have a general question about deciding who's in the front and the back. If there's a significant weight difference for efficiency, does it matter what side you're on?
So we'll talk a little bit about river running later. You want the boat to be trim if you can. We'll talk
Trim
about how
means
you do
level.
that. The boat trim. So if you can't trim the boat with the stronger person in front, then you might put the stronger person in the back. It's a little boat dependent. But typically you want your strongest person in the front. So typically the biggest person will go in the front.
So for a canoe, that was a good place to put your feet. Like if it's just open in the front, what do you recommend doing with your feet? Just
Finding something to put there so that you do have something to rest your feet on.
okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna run away, let Veronica. For the sake of argument, let's pretend that this is the river over here. The path, the walkway path is the river, yes? And so the river, we're looking downriver and down, so the river is turning right, yes? In the river, you're always looking downstream, right? So you're always seeing, when I say right, it means downstream is to the right, yes? So the river is turning right. Where is the deepest part of the river?
Outside of the curve.
Outside of the curve, and it's factually true, and if you forget, it's very easy to understand why, because the water is getting pushed forward by gravity, and if it's going to go to the right, something has to push it to the right, and it sure isn't the right bank that's pushing it to the right. It's the left bank that's pushing it to the right, yes? So that's the physics lesson for today. So where is the fastest water?
Outside of the
So it is close to the same spot, but it's not on the bank. The bank itself, the water and the mud, gravel, whatever, they stick to one another. That's the chemistry lesson for today, is that they actually stick together. And so the water right on the bank is actually not going very fast. Yes? The deepest water is close to the bank, but the fastest water is a little off the bank, where it's still deep, but there isn't as much friction. Yeah? So the fastest water is actually on the outside of the turn, but not that close to the bank. Yeah?
So if you look at the outside of the bank, you will see swirls. That is where the water is slowing down, and it's actually going upstream in circles. So where you want to be is on the outside of those swirls, not in.
Okay, so that's the fastest water. Now, give me a reason not to be in the fastest water. If there's somebody there, yeah, give me another reason.
Harder to control.
I'm sorry?
A little harder to control.
It might be harder to control a little bit, especially if it's swirly, as Veronica said.
Obstacles.
Obstacles, if there's an obstacle on the outside,
That's
then
what it looks at.
you particularly don't want to be there because the fast current is there and there's an obstacle. Yeah? Not a good combination. Okay, give me one other reason. You could swamp your canoe, yes.
Yes? Oh, you were saying.
Okay, I was fishing for one other reason, and that is if the outside curve is really long and the inside is pretty short, right? Even though the fast water is on the outside, the fastest time might be taking the shortcut, yes? So that's the math lesson for today, is that that we have to take into account not just the speed of the water, but also the distance that we're going. So the optimization question is how to choose between the two of them. Neil.
They've been trying to unify all the sciences, and you've done it today. I really applaud you.
So that's in a nutshell the reasons that we need to be in control of the boat, is to decide where it's optimal. Now, if there's a safety issue, meaning you cannot see, if you cannot see around the bend, then you definitely want to be on the inside, the less pushy water, just for safety. Now, on the course of the race, on the ski to sea race, there's only two places that I can think of where you would not see what's on the outside. Yeah, one of them, there's a list of holes in the water. We call it the wing wall. It's somewhat between the guide and the finish line. By guide, I mean the guide meridian. It's the second bridge that the race goes under. The first bridge being Hannigan Road Bridge. The second one is the guide. It's a little ways below the guide. I mean, maybe 3 or 4 turns below. So a little ways. But there's a wing wall, and you can go on the inside and you can go on the outside, and you will not see what's on the outside as you approach. Okay, I'll talk a little bit more about practice, and one of the goals of practice is to see things so that you know what you're going to do during the race. Yeah. There's one other spot in the upper river where there's a side channel, and you won't see what's around that side channel. I've not gone around that side channel this year, so I don't know what's there. I'm not planning on going around that side channel because it doesn't seem fast to me. But I would stay on the inside if I went there to see what it's like. Okay?
Are there any places where you can bottom out?
Yes. So there are a few places where you can bottom out. There's some gravel bars. There's in fact a bar that's several bars have built up. Some have been eroded. So there's a bar that's been built up where I actually bottomed out a couple of weeks ago because I chose the wrong place, and I put a couple of scratches in my nice carbon boat. But it'll live. It's tougher than we think.
Can you predict where they are?
Yes, yeah. So scouting is a good choice. Yeah. Let me talk a little bit about equipment, and then talk about prep, which will include scouting. Okay. So equipment, obviously a boat. Yes. In general, the longer, stiffer the boat is, the faster it is. But also the long racing boats are tippier. Yeah. It's a trade-off. Yeah. I would say, like a heavy fiberglass boat is going to be faster than a slightly lighter plastic boat, just because plastic is very flexy, and that is not, it absorbs some of your power, and it's not that efficient. So, I paddled a 50-pound fiberglass boat when I first started, and it was faster than a Kevlar boat that was 30 pounds, but was a little wider in the mud. Just saying. So if you have choice of boats, stiff, long is good. As far as equipping the boat, a cover keeps water out and keeps the wind out of the boat. I would strongly advise putting a cover on, even if it's just nylon from the hardware store, 6 mil, the stuff you put in crawl spaces, connected to the boat with duct tape. I have one boat that I put duct tape on with a plastic thing. That was 20 years ago. It's still on there. Yeah, it works. Okay, highly recommended. People talked about foot braces. A lot of the boats have foot braces, and they're adjustable, so you can adjust your trim. If you don't have a foot brace and you want to have a foot brace, foam core stuff works just fine. You can stick it here. If you need, if your foot brace isn't long enough, you can stick this on top of it. In the back of the boat, if there's a place for feet, you can stick something on top of that. Just put it through there, zip tie it, it'll stay. You know, that kind of thing. Being comfortable in the boat and being able to wind up with your feet is really useful. It also makes you feel better, just more comfortable, yeah? Okay, other outfitting things. Some people like to have bailers in their boats. You don't need to have one. I think if you go swimming in the Nooksack, chances are you're going to go to shore and just dump the boat on shore and get back in. Which side of shore would you go to if you dumped your boat?
Inside of the turn.
The inside of the turn. Even if you're closer to the outside of the turn,
Don't do it.
you'll go to the inside because it's safer.
Well,
Yes?
there are. We lost the boat by going to the inside of the turn in heavy water. I mean, to the outside of the turn. Pardon me.
As far as personal equipment goes, dry bags with extra clothes, cell phone, that kind of stuff. Some people bring a repair kit for their boat. This is a roll of flex tape. It's a repair kit. It should have a pocket knife in there because flex tape is very hard to cut. Duct tape also works. I know of 2 cases in all of the times that I've heard about in the race. One time when somebody hit a stick and did have a piece of tape with them, and they patched up the boat, and they probably lost 2 or 3 minutes and finished the race. Another time, I know people who put a hole in their boat and didn't have a repair kit. Fortunately for them, the hole was just a little above the water line, so only some water came into the boat, but they lost time because they were paddling a tub full of water, and their boat had a drain. It was a race boat. Most of these race boats have self bailers.
I don't think we need to do any of that.
They have self bailers. They work on Venturi effect, and they had one, and they ran the race with their bailer open, and they managed to finish, and they had a miserable time. Okay, so I don't usually carry a repair kit in the boat because I don't think I'm going to hit anything, but that's because I've seen the river a lot, and so I happen to know where the obstacles are, and so that's. But these people that I'm talking about who hit things were experienced good paddlers. They just didn't see something. And there was one time in the race where I didn't see something until the very last minute. And both of us, both my partner and I, had to react really quickly to miss it. Okay? Dry bag for cell phone or whatever if you want. Personal hydration. Some people like something like this that goes in a butt pack, and they just snake it through their PFDs, sometimes add a stiffener or something so they can drink. Some people have PFDs that have a back pocket where you can stick a hydration pack and do that. Here is my drinking setup. It's a tube. You can find tubes at some hardware stores or beer supply places, that kind of thing. This tube will go in here. I have a special cap that has a hole in it, and I duct tape the tube to it. And I have a fancy necklace. It has a little piece of Velcro here. It has a length adjustment here, also known as a rubber band. And you know, it goes here, and I can adjust the length so that the tube sits where I'm happy with it. I tend to do the run on my team, so I don't like having a lot of extra water on me when I'm running. So I just wear this, and after a few minutes in the river, I just pick up my tube and snap it on there, and that's where it stays for the rest of the race. I think the only thing that's left in the equipment category
Can I add to the hydration?
is, I'm sorry?
Can I add to hydration?
Add to hydration, yes.
Definitely think about putting electrolytes, some sort of drink system in your drinks. You're going to be out there for 2 hours. If it's sunny, you'll really want it, but one way or the other, you're going to need it. I always used to find that around halfway, I really needed to recharge somehow. And having, especially if it's windy, yeah. So make sure you have some electrolyte system somehow that you like in your hydration system.
Snacks, gel packs, that kind of stuff. People will often take a gel pack and just tape it to the side of their canoe so they can easily pick it up. The next part of equipment is the paddles that I know we've talked about. Now this was told to me by Dagan Blakely from Calgary, who, and I think it's a great system. She says when your paddle's in the water, and if you're wearing a baseball cap of some sort, you should be able to see your upper hand above the below your cap. If it's above your cap, then your paddle's too long, right? So that's one way to measure it. It's not that easy to do just sitting in a chair, but you could try it, right? So
you have a baseball cap for it being too short?
I'm sorry?
You have a baseball cap to show that's too short?
No. But you might cotton one.
I will.
Yeah. So the trend has been for paddles to get shorter. When I first started paddling, I was told to paddle with like a 52 inch paddle, 52 inches being the distance from the handle to the bottom of the blade. This I think this is a 49 and a half. Okay. Again, you're thinking about fast strokes up front. Yeah. As far as paddles go, weight matters. Pacific North Sports at the Granary building here in Bellingham carries the ZREs. ZRE paddles, which are probably the best you're going to do right now. Good recreational paddles, carbon fiber, or wood for that matter, wood with laminated with fiberglass. Bending Branches is a brand that a lot of people like. I know Jaeger's Sporting Goods carries Bending Branches. Clipper Canoes carries Bending Branches. I don't actually know of any place else around here that might have them. You can have plastic paddles, they're fine, but they're heavy, and the bench shaft paddles I also would recommend. There's everywhere in between. I know Jaeger's carries some less expensive paddles. I think Pacific North Sports carries the Winona recreational paddle, which is probably twice as heavy as these, but still pretty good. Any equipment questions? Equipment.
But like shoes? Like, is there types of shoes that you recommend? Like,
so shoes. First of all, there are lots of different things that people do. I have seen people use running shoes and even shave the sides off of them so that they fit in the bow of the boat a little better, so that the bow paddler can actually put their feet next to one another as opposed to on top of one another. During ski to sea, I like thin, simple water shoes. So like Keens or something like that. Solomon used to make a water shoe that was pretty popular. I didn't like it because it doesn't fit me, right? These boots like this are great for practice, but I don't race in them.
These are a little warm. If race day is warm at all, these get too warm.
Yeah.
But you can get a low top version of top neoprene shoes.
Some people
But for
use booties.
practicing, booties are really nice. Your feet don't freeze so much.
Some people use booties like the ones that Neil is wearing. And both Pacific North Sports and Jaegers carries those. By the way, about dry bags, REI or Jaegers are the places you buy the have them, but they're available in lots of places. Lots of kayaking shops and stuff like that.
Yeah,
There's-
temporary canoe is also worth a trip up to Canada.
There's one thing that I forgot to mention about equipment, and I apologize for that. Quite a few people put floats inside their boats. So as I talked about the cover, obviously I can't put a float in here because I can't fit it in. But some people will put a center float in the boat and tie it down to the boat. What that does is two things. If you flip the boat, then obviously you have flotation in there. And secondly, it does help support any cover or anything you put on there to keep the wind off. So that's another thing that people do. It adds weight, but it adds safety. That is one thing I forgot to mention.
You said that goes under the cover?
Yeah, typically the float goes under the, it's just a inflatable sack.
Do you recommend a big central one or two side bags or?
Central one is what most people do. They are what people call center floats that are about this big, and then they're things that people call half center floats. The idea is that you put two of them together in the middle. I'd actually get a half center float and put just one of them in the middle because they're actually a lot bigger than you think.
Okay, not in the front and back.
No, I wouldn't do that. A lot of boats have built-in flotation front and back, and that's fine.
Especially we would.
Yeah, I mean these race boats have a built-in core that floats. So yeah.
I don't know if Damien said anything, but if you have one of these boats,
So it depends on what's in the dry bag, but I always clip my dry bag to the boat. If there's something absolutely essential that if you lose the boat, you want to have it, like I don't know, your keys or something, you might put them in your PFD as opposed to in the boat. Yes.
For practice on the river, are there any locations that you would say, hey, these are the really popular ones?
Yes. So thank you. So the first thing I would do is run from the guide. There's a Washington boat ramp over there at the Guide Meridian on the river. It's just before you get to Linden.
get yourself a Discover Pass because you'll need it to park there and at the boat ramp in Ferndale.
Yeah, and there's a boat ramp in Ferndale, and that section is probably between an hour and 15 and an hour and a half in terms of time. I would do that section first. It's slightly slower moving than the upper section. There's slightly fewer obstacles there. It's pretty visible. Going from the Ferndale boat ramp to Hovander is also possible. That's just about 1.5 miles or 1.25 miles. It's very short. Last time we were at Hovander, it was still closed because of the flood damage.
Do it right now.
So I would recommend going from the guide to the boat, from the guide boat ramp to the Ferndale boat ramp as kind of your first outing, and then going from Everson from City Park there to the guide as your second thing. That's about an hour. The upper river. It's faster moving water, a little bit more standing waves, just a little bit, and so I would do that second.
So if you're fairly new, do the lower section a few times before you jump the upper section, so you feel comfortable when you're in the boat.
You said that was guide to Ferndale,
Guide to Ferndale,
and
yeah.
then Everson.
And then Everson to the guide is the
Yeah.
next one. There's a boat ramp before you get to Hovander, so you go down Main Street and make a left, and then the boat ramp is almost immediately after the church.
Yeah,
that's where
it's
you
very
take out.
popular with dog walkers. So there's a bunch of cars there.
And you might want to go and look at the takeout because it's really easy to go past the takeout there and not see it before you actually go up and run each other and go down the river.
Practicing in a lake is also good. Practicing in a lake is very challenging in terms of keeping a straight line. You'll have an easier time keeping a straight line in the river than you do in the lake.
Probably noticed today with the wind.
And that brings me to talk a little bit about trim. You'll notice that we have a line here on the boat and another one on the bow. The way we put them on there is we put the boat down flat on a concrete floor or something and a pavement and just measure up exactly the same distance from both ends, probably 4 inches or something like that. And that allows you to look, or somebody on shore, to look at those two tabs and tell you whether you should be further forward or further back. That allows you to try to keep the boat level. We call it trim. And that really affects your speed and your control. If you want anything being a little bow down is okay in the river. So like
But by little, we mean a little, not.
a little is
You're getting
no more
good
than
in,
half an
that's
inch.
a lot.
No more than half an inch downriver. And that actually, because the current pushes on the bow, that's what makes going straight in the river a little easier than in the lake. But if you can go straight in the lake, you're golden, right? You've got it. And it's okay to practice some maneuvering things in the lake until you feel comfortable, and then go to the river. Again, buddy up. That's what I suggest. Okay, race day. Before race day, find out how long your cyclist thinks they're going to take. Yeah? So if my cyclist takes, let's say, 2 hours, okay? Then when I get the SMS notification that the cyclist's on the course, I know that I need to be there in 2 hours. Probably I'm going to be there a little early. Yes?
And by there you mean up at the train.
At the exchange. At the exchange. So I'm sorry, is everybody clear about the logistics of how the canoe leg works, right? We get a handoff from the cyclist, we run it through the timing gate, run to the boat, put the boat in the river, and paddle down. When we get to the end, we run up a short ramp, a dirt ramp at Hovander, and meet the cyclocross there, and the cyclocross person gets the chip, and they are allowed to swipe it as soon as all three of us are up, at the top of the thing. So if knowing when your cyclist arrives, or approximately, is really good, because it gives you some idea of how long you have to prepare before they arrive. So I would recommend signing up for the SMS notification. Now, there's been traditionally an observation tent about 4 miles before the finish line, and they tend to read numbers and call them in. Yeah. This year, there's a new arrangement. There's still going to be this observation tent 4 miles out. But in addition, Ski to Sea has forked out some money to have an automatic reader at that place. So there will be a strip that will read a chip attached to the the seat stem of the bicycle, and so we will actually get an automatic reading of that time. The reason is that cyclists tend to bunch up, they tend to be head down, it's very hard to read their numbers accurately. Race day, eat a big breakfast, make sure you're fueled up, have a snack by all means between the time you arrive at Everson and the race time. Try to time your snack so that it's not right before you run, because you're not going to be too happy. Veronica already mentioned hydration fluid, some electrolytes, maybe some goo or something like that. On the run, they decide, the lead chair will decide exactly where we're going to go. So we don't know exactly how that's going to be. When you get to the beach, have one person stay on the shore. No matter what they tell you, you can put in anywhere you want at the bar. So last year, people were told that they had to put in the running chute, basically. That's just not true. Ignore that. I have it on good authority that we're allowed to. I talked to the lecturer. And so put in anywhere you want, but the running chute needs to be left open so that the runners can come. Decide in advance how you're going to go in, and also decide in advance how you want to come out at Hovande. Some people like to come in forward, some people like to come in and turn back. It's good to communicate. You know, if you tell your partner that you're out of the boat, then they know they can start running if they can't see you. I think that's kind of it for race day.
Any questions?
Yes.
Approximately how long is the run for the?
It's usually about a quarter mile. Quarter mile from the handoff to the bar. The beginning of it is on pretty solid ground, maybe gravel or grass. The end of it is kind of over pebbles. It's nice to have shoes. You were talking about, somebody was asking about shoes. It's nice to have shoes that don't feel the pebbles if you run on them. Yes?
At the finish, do you carry the boat with you to the cyclocross handoff?
So the short answer, yes. You are the cyclocross cyclist is allowed to help with the boat and or anything else. They're not allowed to take the chip and run. They're not allowed to leave the boat, you in the boat, until you're at the level pod on top.
Okay, so all three plus the boat go past the handoff.
Basically,
Yes.
there'll be a banner up there when you run under the banner. It's like a
Yeah. Is I get off the boat, I give the chip to the cyclocross guy. My partner and I carry our boats, and the minute he's allowed to go, he goes.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like to bother him to carry the boat, but my boat's 30 pounds.
So you said it's a quarter mile when you pick it up from the cyclist. What is the distance at the end to get it to the cyclocross?
It's literally from here to the parking lot.
Oh, okay. So
Up a hill.
okay.
It's a steep,
Yeah.
sandy, crummy
Yeah.
hill.
Love that.
But it's
Okay.
but it's really just from here to the parking lot.
Sweet. Okay. Thank you.
The problem, that brings up a point though that's worth mentioning. The problem is that you've been sitting, and even though you've been pumping your legs a little bit as part of the wind-up, your legs are going to feel kind of stiff. So one of the pieces of advice is to actively pump your legs a little bit before, just a few seconds before you get to the finish line, so that your legs actually don't collapse when you get out of the boat. It does happen.
Just sat down in the water.
It does happen.
I bet.
Yeah, if it happens, it happens.
Will there be an opportunity to bring our boats to Everson the night before?
Yes. Yeah. Same arrangement as years before. I believe the Boy Scouts are going to be there guarding boats, and you'll be able to leave the boats there after they get inspected.